All right, good morning and welcome to the VIP seat. Today is December 12th, and our top stories in private aviation include an attempted hijacking of a flight in Mexico and how pre-owned aircraft prices are still struggling a bit even post-election. Your hosts today include yours truly, Jessie Naor, and our co-host today is Zach Ungerleider. Wait, did I say that right?
No, it's,
Ungerleider.
it's a Ungerleider. Ungerleider, yeah. There
I
we
gotta
go.
have the German accent to it. Ungerleider.
I'm not sure what I think about that, Jesse.
Well, welcome to the show. We're really
Thank
excited to
you.
have you on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome, folks. Well, sit back, buckle up, and let's take off. So, back in June of 2023, and a slew of different incidents that happened not only to private jets, but also to super yachts, some environmentalists in Germany and other parts of the world started throwing paint all over aircraft on airfields, just doing incredible damage. But it looks like some justice has actually been served in one of these cases. This case was two environmentalists who spray painted a Cessna CJ1 Plus in northern Germany. This was the one, I don't know if everyone saw pictures of it, it's just orange paint completely covering the aircraft. Sad, so sad. Don't know how this makes a difference in actually making a difference in the world as a protester, but the courts decided to put two of them in jail, one for at least 6 months. So it's nice to see a little justice being served in this case. No, Zach?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's almost like, how did they get on the field? Why isn't somebody watching the perimeter a little better? And is this going to make a difference or impact in Europe for all the protesting that's been happening? Those are my questions.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I don't think a lot of these folks are thinking about. There is the we're protesting, we're putting our thoughts out there on why we think private aviation isn't good for the world, but you also can't just break into an airport. These are really secure places that are subject to terrorism and all sorts of security incidents. Don't do that. So I'm glad the judge seems to be putting a like this is not okay, and if you're going to do this crime, and it is a crime in this case, like you're seriously pay the time.
Yeah. The funniest part about it is it's like the aviation emissions from general aviation aren't, I mean, it's like a tiny little speck of the percentage of pollution that happens. So, I mean, I don't understand where their basis for this protesting is coming from. Like, why don't you go protest the airliners? But they'll probably go fly on one the next day, you know?
Well, private jets are the easy target. I feel like
Yeah.
that's always what it comes down to is we're a smaller industry. This airfield isn't as secure as, let's say, in Miami or something like that. So they can actually figure out how to get on it. And on top of that, too, like there's always the haves versus the haves nots in these debates. And oh, well, these rich people get to go do this. And it's like, well, it's not, they don't understand the necessity of it as a tool. A lot of people miss that. And, yeah, but I still can't imagine $1 million in damages. I don't even know if does insurance cover that?
I don't know if they would or not. I would imagine so because it would be considered vandalism of the aircraft. But I mean, I guess it depends on your policy, you know?
Yeah. What happens when paint gets inside of an engine? You're the engine expert here.
I haven't seen that happen, so I'm not sure how to answer that, to be
Wow.
honest with you. I mean, we deal more with FOD and things like that than, somebody getting paint in the engine. I'm assuming that, if they got it on the fan, because that's probably likely where they would spray paint, it would just have to be removed and cleaned. I don't think it would cause any significant damage, but I could be wrong. Don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where a lot of the value of that asset is in those engines.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Now, if
yikes.
they chunk a paint can while it's operating, that's a different thing.
And chucks it in there. Yeah. That's,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Major
going to be some
problem.
bending of metal in there for sure.
Yes.
Well, according to the prosecutor's office, yeah, they caused at least $1 million in damage. They also caused $4,000 worth of damage when they cut into the airport fence. And apparently, 8 days later, they also broke into a nearby golf course and planted trees and flowers there.
Because that one or two trees you plant, it's gonna make such a huge difference.
On the golf course, which will immediately be mowed down for someone to.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Well, at least maybe this is a message to those in the future. Find another way to protest. There's got
Yeah,
to be better ways to get your points across, and maybe some better industries that you can target that are doing a lot more than private aviation is, because we're a pretty small group of people.
yeah.
All right. Well, in our next story of criminal behavior, this is not business aviation; it's commercial aviation. But I just thought it was interesting because it's the first time we've seen a legitimate hijacking attempt in a long time. So, a passenger on a flight to Tijuana was attempting to enter the United States. So, using a pin on a flight attendant, threatening her by putting the pin against her neck. He was trying to get access to the cockpit. He did actually manage to crack open the plane door a little bit in the process, threatening to throw her out. I can't imagine the terrifying situation on that plane. But fortunately, those standing by, the passengers got up and subdued him and took care of it. But man, I haven't seen one of these in a long time. And I haven't seen this in the news in a long time.
No, no, no. I mean, I think the days since September 11th, people have really, obviously become more aware of the danger of someone trying to hijack an aircraft. And I think the people that now fly, I mean, I know when I'm on an airplane and, if I see something I think is suspicious, I mean, my brain immediately goes to, I'm not going to let this go down. So I think everybody remembers that fateful day that occurred in 2001. And so, I don't think people are going to let that happen anymore. I mean, even if it's risking your own life to save everyone else on the aircraft, I think that's going to be a thing going forward for a long time.
Yeah, I know. I think the heroism of a lot of those folks, even during September 11th, on some of the aircraft that they managed to not run into the towers and other targets, those were true heroes. Yeah, even I would. I mean, I'm not like that physically strong, but I'm like I'm going after them, eyeballs,
Yeah. Yeah.
nose, whatever we
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah. Good luck with that pin, buddy. I'm going to hit you with anything else I can find.
Well, and some of these reports of, I mean, the airlines over the last couple of years, seeing people like duct tape people to seats. We had the guy that was on drugs last year in the cockpit. Like,
Yeah.
man, it's hard to be a commercial flight attendant dealing with some of these shenanigans.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
Pretty nuts. But yeah, I don't know. There is a video of this on Reddit if anyone would like to go actually see the raw footage of the subdued passenger happening. But I think there was something to do with the drug cartel. He wanted I just can't imagine, like, what did he think he was going to get when he got to the United States? Like, after you
Yeah.
do that, they're going to ship you
Yeah.
right back.
Right. We're talking about mass deportations here. Like, what do you think is going to happen when you land?
I
Especially
mean,
after hijacking an airplane. Like, that's probably the worst country to go to after you just made that action. So, probably not a good idea.
we're a little sensitive in the US about
Just a little.
hijackings. Just a little bit, but it is wild. I mean, September 11th, that was over 20 years ago at this point. And I wonder if like the next generations will understand and feel the same way that we do about it, because that was so like a part of our life at an important age.
It's a good point. It makes you think like what'll be in the history books. I mean, if they won't even have books, I don't think kids use books these days anyway. But like, when in our recent history, when two generations after us come along, it makes you think like, what are they gonna? How will they perceive that event, and will it be as impactful as it has been on ours? It's an interesting thought.
Yeah. But be vigilant out there. Even,
Mhm.
pins or whatever it is. Kudos to the passengers that actually took care of this situation. Wild.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we'll get back into business aviation. Commercial airlines are, the big boys, but we like our space.
Yeah.
So this is a rough story. It's not doesn't end well. So a couple years ago, or actually 2023, there was a fatality that everyone kind of thought was due to in-flight turbulence, and actually that led a lot of folks to kind of reconsider like the passenger briefings, the guidelines that they give in private aviation as far as remaining, seated with your seatbelt at all times. But come to find out, this accident involving a Challenger in 2003, it was a Part 91 flight. Unfortunately, what actually occurred, according to the NTSB report that just came out, was the pilots did not remove the pitot tube cover on the aircraft. They continued with CAS messages, crew alerting system messages saying, hey, there's something wrong, there's something wrong. Didn't abort a takeoff, tried again. They did not call maintenance control to take a look at the issue. And unfortunately, this resulted in the crew alerting system was displaying a rudder limiter fault advisory on the taxiway after the aborted takeoff, and the flight director was stuck in pitch mode. This created oscillations that, unfortunately, a passenger who did not have their seatbelt on was thrown up into the aircraft. I believe a broken neck, and a fatality resulted. So pretty sad. And just from a pitot tube cover, you talk about the importance of your pre-flights. Just something that simple can cause a fatality like this.
I mean, it's kind of as a pilot, when you're doing your walk around. I mean, I'm an A&P also, so when I would fly, for example, like when Del Rey and I take his Bonanza, I'm like super meticulous about the walk around. Like I'm looking at screws, I'm looking at every single possible thing that could be an issue during flight. And so, as a Challenger 300 SIC, you would think this guy would have saw the pitot cover. That would have been one of the first things. No matter what distractions occur, like do your walk around again. And additionally, if you've got what I think it said, the flight director was all the way to the right. I mean, how do you let that go and still continue with the flight? I just don't get it. I mean, that's negligent, not only negligent, but, obviously unsafe and just absolutely absurd as a pilot. I mean, I could never imagine taking a business jet like this and just continuing on, even though you see obvious issues. There's some things like when you're doing your takeoff, your pre-takeoff runs, there's certain things you might say, that's not a big deal. Or, like on a small plane, the mag drop that's a little bit more, you probably wouldn't want to continue, but some people might. It's like there's little stuff that maybe you can kind of let go, but that's not one of them. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to it's complacency. It's this, oh, we'll be fine. There's so many of those like, hazardous attitudes of pilots that, these things end up. And honestly, it's too something that's just like, man, just a pitot tube cover, to
Yeah.
cause a fatality like this. But I think so often, and, I even saw this when we were, running our aircraft, like, a lot of people see, they think it's just the gremlins in the machine, oh, I'll just reset it and it'll be fine. Oh, just reset it and it'll be fine. But like sometimes it's not just a reset. Like sometimes this is why we have these alert messaging systems. Like we have to continue to take them seriously, even if you've seen stuff like that before. But just a shame. This occurred just 8 minutes into the flight. And two, to have like an aborted takeoff in the first place, you're going to have to
Yeah.
write a report about that. Like that's going to, well, I guess maybe not if it was part 91, part 135, if you have an aborted, takeoff or diversion, you have to report that to FAA, but I guess you don't have that requirement in 91. So just don't take it as
Well, I
seriously.
mean, it's both pilots' responsibility to be safe, and so the PIC was just as much his fault as the SIC for not catching the pitot tube. I mean, aborted takeoff, you have all these issues going on in the cockpit before you decide to rotate. You should have gone back to the flight line and shut down. I mean, just that simple. And maybe you find that pitot tube, and this person doesn't die because of it. I mean, it's unbelievable.
No, it really is. But still, at the end of the day, even if this was turbulence related, I would tell every passenger out there, just wear your seatbelt. Like it
Yeah.
just does not hurt at all times. It doesn't matter if it's a clear, beautiful day or not. The only time my seatbelt's off is if I'm getting up, going to get something, and I put it right back on, even on commercial flights. Like it's just a nice little safety feature because you just never know what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. When we were right after Corporate Jet Investor Miami, a friend of mine's wife was coming back from Norway, and her aircraft was, I guess, somewhere over the Atlantic, and the airplane literally dropped like 8,000 feet, like from turbulence. So just a prime example of what you're saying. Like I always have my seatbelt on all the time, also because you never know what could happen.
Yeah. And the thing that makes me totally crazy is when people are like messing around with like the stuff in the top. Like when it's like, get your stuff out before the plane takes off. Like I don't want to be underneath your 50-pound suitcase that's going to land on my face when this thing comes out.
It's a good point.
Basics, people. Alrighty. Well, so this is an interesting one for you. For those who
Okay.
don't know, Zach is one of the pretty high ups in Honeywell. You're, doing all the major engine programs. The pre-owned market, we've all been kind of on pins and needles, waiting to see turn around a bit. I think there have been a lot of aircraft in the market. And prices are starting to slump. According to Sandhills, there was a report this month that prices have dropped by 6% year over year in November, 2.4% month over month from October. So I think that all makes sense. We've seen a lot of aircraft coming onto the market, and we're all kind of saying like, people are probably a little priced too highly. And they need to continue to bring these down to actually get their stuff moving. But what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so we're seeing the same thing. It aligns with the article. The aircraft values got a good resurgence when COVID kind of subsided. Everybody started, purchasing aircraft sight unseen for prices higher than they normally would have pre-COVID. And now I think it's all falling back down to earth. We definitely see this a lot with our MSP enrollments. So for example, if I've got a Lear 45 that's, pretty high time on the engines, a lot of times the buy-in calculates pretty substantial compared to the aircraft value. And so my team specifically, we're very focused on the aircraft values and ensuring that a quote that I give out to a customer makes sense, right? Like The aircraft is worth 2.4 million. I'm not going to throw a quote out there. It's 3.2 million to buy in. No, that doesn't make sense to anybody, So we try to make sure that everything is accurate. So we're seeing a lot more of this happening. I actually just finished the first course of the ASA appraiser course, to kind of have a better understanding of how aircraft values are kind of calculated. So it makes me better at my own job. So I'll be finishing that accreditation sometime in 2025. But it all of these things relate, and we've definitely seen a decline in values. There's a lot more aircraft available for sale right now. If you go on, any of the, JetNet or Amstat, you're going to see a ton of airplanes for sale. So buyer has a choice of a lot of different aircraft to pick from.
Yeah. I'm also wondering too, for a while there, we were seeing a lot of airplanes that would have normally been scrapped
Yeah.
not be scrapped. And I'm wondering if now that's actually happening because engine values are overshadowing what the whole asset value itself is.
Yeah, there's definitely a weird dynamic going on right now. I mean, you've got a lot of aging, and so what's happening is a lot of times the increase of parts costs has gone up due to the fact that raw materials have been hard to come by for the last couple of years. There's a conflict in Russia-Ukraine region. A lot of our metals come from that region to make engine parts. Supply and demand rules, and therefore you've got parts, they're going to be more expensive to acquire. In a lot of cases, the engine repair costs exceed the value of the aircraft. And so at that point, you have to make an economic decision. Is the aircraft still viable, or should I just, part it out and try to make money off of it that way? We're seeing a lot more of that activity. There's a lot more engines coming available on the market that we're actively pursuing to buy for our own rental bank purposes. So it's definitely an interesting world right now. I'd like to look at this a year or two in the future and then kind of reflect back and say, what actually happened since we had this conversation, how
Yeah.
many airplanes got knocked in the head at that, 2 years later. That'll be real interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. And there's definitely different pockets. Like certain aircraft are moving, certain aren't. Just looking at this, like super midsize inventory of super midsize jets has experienced the biggest jump, 15.6% year over year and 5.5% month over month. I mean, that's a huge increase in inventory. But light jets seem to be declining the most. They were down 4.1%. And large jets were at 6.8% in value decline. So there are, I think, slivers of hope in some markets, but not all the aircraft. I think someone's saying that there's a lot of Gulfstreams on the market, especially like G4, G5s. Like a lot of those probably will end up on the parts pile, if I had to guess, at some point, if
Yeah,
they continue to decline in value.
definitely agree.
Yeah. But I think everyone came away from CJI optimistic that we're going to see, some depreciation, things happening next year, maybe another 100% bonus depreciation. That will be a nice boost to the market. There's all sorts of things that are going on and unknowns when it comes to the regulators for next year. But I do think overall, I feel positive. I feel like the market is getting back to where it was. We went through the highs of post COVID. We've been through a little bit of a lull now, and now we're coming back up the mountain, I think.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I mean, from the MSP Honeywell standpoint, we definitely have a lot of optimism over the next year or two. There's a lot of good things happening right now in business aviation. So yeah, definitely. And that's, I don't know if you were in the audience when I was on stage, but I mean, I share a lot of optimism about our supply chain improvements, and that's typically due to the fact that I see a lot of things that Honeywell's doing internally to try to fix these problems. So like we're really making an effort to fix the supply chain issues for critical components, and we are starting to see some better stories occur from those actions. So I mean, I think it's going to get better. Supply chain is driving a lot of the things that are going on right now. So, if you can't get parts for a Hawker 800 or something like an old aircraft, in a lot of cases, if you're sitting there waiting 6 to 8 months, if it's a revenue generating aircraft, what do you do? I mean, you might as well just knock it in the head and just, part it out and try to make money off of it somehow. So it's an interesting environment right now.
Well, I think a lot of people will be relieved to hear you say you're increasing your rent to pool. That's been one of the frustrations with some of the programs, and you guys got a little bit of a jab at CJI for that too. But it's coming from this world that we're in. Ukrainian titanium and other issues. I mean, it's not been an easy problem to solve the last couple of years.
No, for sure. And I mean, we've been recapitalizing the engine bank for probably a year or two now, if not more, just because we recognize the need and the customer feedback. Like we do listen to people. I think a lot of people think that OEMs just kind of turn a blind eye to customer feedback, but we actually really pay attention. And a lot of that feedback gets fed into our internal meetings, and we discuss it. And there's a lot of solutioning happening around the supply chain, and it's been a focus for about a year or two, but these things don't happen quick. Like you can't just get a vendor, set them up, and say, "Oh, you're good to go. Now give us parts." Like it just doesn't work that way. And so, as much as people want it to happen tomorrow, it's going to happen as soon as we can make it happen. But we're doing everything we can.
Yeah. Well, we all have, we look at aviation safety and how important that is, even in our supply chain and parts, that's incredibly important. We've seen a lot of issues with, Chinese dupes of things over the last few years, like you guys going through and making sure you have solid suppliers that are doing things the right way, that are up to the standards that you expect. I mean, that is not something that's overnight.
Yep. We've actually rejected batches of parts from suppliers because they didn't meet our requirements. I mean, and this is at a time when we absolutely desperately needed those components to clear engines out of the shop. We rejected the whole batch. So I mean, we're safety is our number one priority for the engines that engines and components that we manufacture and repair.
Yeah. No, and like most things in aviation, if it's not safe, we're just not going, so we're gonna have to wait. That's how it works.
Very true.
So this is the next story, our last story of the day. Is a little interesting. So Volato, who was a fractional operator, I think they still might have an airplane or two out there. They had sold, or not sold. I think Flight Exclusive just took over management of the majority of their fleet and their customers. They fired almost, over. I know it was over 50 employees because there was violations of the WARN Act potentially. So they're still in litigation right now, saying did they violate the WARN Act? They've got customers that may or may not be receiving refunds. A lot of problems happening from that company right now. And they just released a couple weeks ago or a week ago that they're now going to be investing in Bitcoin mining in aviation. I'm just going to leave that there for whatever people think that they should think about that. It's an interesting move. So I'm not really entirely sure what they're up to and what this is going to mean, but they're saying they've got some patent pending technology that changes aircraft revenue is generated by repurposing underutilized aircraft resources for cryptocurrency mining. I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't understand. I mean, we were talking a little bit in pre-show. It's like there's no excess energy being produced by an airplane that I know of. All the energy being used to lift an aircraft is being used to lift the aircraft. Like what excess energy are we going to be reusing and repurposing just because people aren't on it?
Yeah, so I'm really not understanding where they're going to take excess resource off the aircraft. I mean, I get it. The generator produces so much electricity, and the aircraft only consumes so much of that electricity. So maybe that's what they're referring to is the electricity that's generated by the aircraft itself, and then they can, use that to. I don't know. Who would have thought that aviation and cryptocurrency would become married at some point? Like, I don't. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what?
It feels like a stretch to me. Some of the things they're saying here, the use of mining hardware, it's operating in a cool and energy rich environment when it's in the air. But I don't know. I don't even know what to say about this, Zach. I just don't know. I'm so confused.
Yeah, I'd like to. It's like, can I get more information about this? What are you talking about? And patent pending technology. What have you patented? Maybe they've developed some sort of machine that gets installed on the aircraft, and they flip a switch, and all of a sudden it starts mining cryptocurrency. But I can't even imagine the bill that you would incur from the Wi-Fi charges while you're in cruise. Like what?
Oh, that too. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess we're getting better Wi-Fi now because of Starlink and, even, Satcom and everybody else. Like they're all moving to like the satellite based, low Earth orbit satellite stuff. But
Yeah.
it just seems like aviation's already so complicated. And now we're putting cryptocurrency mining operations inside of an airplane. And those things are heavy. I don't think that those are like, easily swappable. But I guess we'll have to see. We'll have to see what comes of
It'll be
this.
interesting to watch for sure. Yeah, like who knows? The planes of the future might be mining crypto. I've never been on it. I know some
Yeah.
people have made a good amount of money on it, but this to me was a very crazy move by Velato.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
we'll
there's
see how
some
it goes.
legitimate like crypto concepts out there, but there's also been a lot of scamming in that industry and a lot of taking of people's money. I mean, look at how many of the cryptocurrencies failed. So I always approach these with a bit of a concern before, and healthy skepticism before just, throwing money into something like this. I will say, they were at 22 cents before they released the press release, and then they went up to 37 cents, but they have subsequently gone back down in value. So they got some little bump in the share price. But I mean, if they continue to stay that low, they're going to have to do another stock split, or, at some point we'll see what happens to them.
It'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah. Just had to throw that out there though. The industry wants to know what's going on with Volato, and we're not entirely sure yet.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what happens there for sure.
If nothing else, I am legitimately curious. I am. So,
Yeah, me too.
all right. Well, with that, folks, we're going to wrap up the pod today. We like to keep everything short and sweet on your morning commute. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. We're always looking for feedback and comments on what we should cover next. So we'll see you next time on the VIP seat.